So this morning we've got a Saturday morning job. This was the job we were supposed to be doing last week in Port Hope, well, sending this radiator out. And we've decided to do it here in my shop. It had a radiator fitted a year ago, and it leaks apparently. So we can't see where the leak is from. It looks really good on the inside, but just by putting a few pounds pressure on, you can see where it was leaking out of here. I've also noticed the P gasket down here is leaking, so we're going to pull all this off, but Jim is going to pump up the pumper, he's going to pump up the volume, and then we're going to see where this is leaking. Straight away we can see it's dripping. I can see where it's leaking. Wait a minute, let me get a camera. We can see down here where it's leaking from. It's leaking from the bottom hose, and the hose clip looks like it's been put on by a right idiot, because you can see probably here the hose isn't fastened to the pipe. I'm just hoping that that's not cracked and it's just a piece of hose. Let's take that clip off, and obviously they've done it from underneath, look, because they put the head of the Jubilee clip the wrong way. It should be up here. I'll tell you what, let's first of all, let's take this off and redo this piece of pipe. So I've got the hose off. Jim, can you hold that light about there somewhere, because it's very difficult to see. That's it. So what's happened is, let's see if we can zoom in a bit. What's happened is they put the hose right at the very edge of the pipe, and the hose clip obviously isn't wide, and it's not actually covered the joint, and you can see around here it's not even been connected at all. And the reason is they've put the clip this way instead of taking the cowling off and doing it this way, and then they would have seen what they were doing. So I don't think we need a radiator. What we're going to do is take this off, we're going to put a better clip on, a wider one, and push this pipe on. As you can see, it's not even, we haven't moved that, we've just taken it off now, and the pipe has got a long way to look, you see? It goes there. Let's tighten that one. In fact, let's just use that hose clip, because that's the original one, and we'll tighten it up properly. That'll save a few bucks. This is the tank off a 300 TDI, and on this car here the hose hadn't properly gone over this fitting, and they've fastened it up, but it hadn't clamped around this lip here. All pipe fittings supposed to have this little lip on, so when you put the rubber pipe on, when you clamp it, even with pressure, it's going against this raised area here, so it can't push back. This is one of the problems when people put like bits of pipe on cars to make extensions, especially 200 TDIs, or when they put 300 TDIs into 2.5s, they just use bits of pipe without this flare on the end, and the pipes just drop off. So what's happened with this one, the pipe wasn't on properly. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to get Jim to pressurise it up again. There's Jim. This is a #1 pressure man. He's under pressure.
I'm good at this.
This is Jim's top job. Hopefully. Now there is a P gasket leaking on this, and we're going to do that. That's quite an easy job. So far so good.
Well, you're up to the leaking spot now.
Get it up to 15. Keep going. Wish we had an automated pumper. It's hard, isn't it?
You got me.
It's hard to pump, isn't it?
It is now.
It should be spewing out now.
It doesn't.
There's nothing there, eh?
Keep going, Jim. But what we will find probably is the P gasket's leaking a bit, and that's going to go. So we're going to change that too. This is why sometimes I fill these water containers, the expansion tanks, up to full, so you only have about 3 strokes to do. Oh my, come on, yeah, what a workout.
Use my
breasts.
Use my breasts.
Man boobs. Right, what are we up to? Oh, that's
you're
enough.
over 15.
That's all right. We're over £15. Let's
go. Breast technique that did it.
We should have a certain person here to pump it up.
Yeah, it'll be done in a
Look
flash.
at that. Look at that. Dry as a nun's doodad. It's no problems at all. £15. Let's have a look.
15.
Over £15. Jim went a bit wild with his boobs. But down here, well, we can't quite see, but you can probably see there's press stone down there. We're going to just let me have the flashlight, Jim. That's it. You can probably see down there where it's damp, it's wet. There's antifreeze. There's dots of antifreeze down there. So we're going to change that. Might as well make something out of this job. Might as well get worthwhile. Anyway, so that's what we're up against. That's all it took was a hose clip. A ruined holiday, a lot of frustration from Britpart, and we've got a radiator that's we don't really need. Oh well, sod's law, isn't it? Right, let's drop the water out of this by taking that hose clip off again. But now we know what it is. It was a really easy one. So we'll drop the water out and we'll do the P gasket. Because we've got to change all the coolant anyway because it's been topped up with water and topped up and it's really dilute. So we'll drop off the water and we'll show you how we do the P gasket. Right, so we're going to do this P gasket on this truck here. However, we've got a bit of a problem because some sort of monster has tightened up the bolts on the pulleys down here so damn tight we need to use our little like these easy out sets. I've mentioned them before, but the problem is it needs to go on really with an impact gun, and the problem here is I've had to take the radiator out eventually, you know, in the end I had to take the radiator out because I can't get the gun in, which is a shame. So I'm going to show you on here a typical problem that we have, and I'll move the camera to do it. Right, so this is the bolt we're going to get out. It's a bit difficult to film, but fortunately this has got a provision on the front of here to put an Allen key in so we can hold it tight. So I've put the socket on the end of the gun. It's in reverse. Oh, that's really tight. We're going to have to get some reinforcements. In order to prevent no damage to this pump, I'm actually going to cut the head off this bolt. It's been rounded off when it was fitted. Unfortunately, the easy out won't grab onto there. A bit of a shame. But by cutting the bolt off, cutting the head off, you could actually drill it off if you want. We'll find out that the stud will actually come out finger tight. So let me get that ground off and see what we come on. Just let's trim this off a bit. And now that should come off. Should. There we go. There we go. And I bet you a pound to a penny that'll come out finger tight. Oh, how did I know that? That's that one. So now we can continue and take off the rest of this beam. So we've got to take the bolts out the water pump here. 1, 2, 3. Bolt down there. We're going to take off the power steering pump and just drop it out the way. Take the bolts out of the alternator, and that should be it. We should get access. We're not going to even disconnect the wiring. So let's let's do it now. Oh, why not? Why not? We'll leave the camera running. Now sometimes these bolts here are pretty tight. Was right. Right. These will come out. These are tight. Tight. Right, so we're going to have to get the big gun out on those. We need to get this bolt out of here for the alternator. The battery is already off. I like that little gun because it's just the right size. It's a bit underpowered, but it's the actual right power for these 8mm bolts. There we go. So we can swing that out of the way, we don't need that. And then we need to get a 13mm socket for in here. Which one? Hopefully this will come out. Probably not. Now the next thing, we're just going to get, we'll put this onto the big gun to get those bolts out. See how easy that little bit of torque makes them. Oh, that's a tight one too. Houston, we have a problem. That's tight too. So we've got two tight bolts. This one. Oh, that now. Oh, that bloody water. How's it done, sir? You might be able to get that out using our easy out. Now, I don't think you can sort of see very well. Well, maybe. We've got a bolt that's tight here. So we're going to try this extractor. Oh, another tight one. Let's try a little trick of banging it on the end, see if that'll do. I don't know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. No. I'll have to cut that one off. This one here, I'm going to take that off by hand rather than so I can feel it better. Because that's going to, I've got a feeling that that's going to snap. Oh, that is tight. That is tight. I have to get the torch out now. So with a bit of persuasion with a hammer, by using a big hammer, and beating on this bolt here with the head, and then gently prising it off, just using a key, a ratchet, I've managed to make it move a bit, just a bit, 1/8 of an inch if that. So I'm going to put the gun on and I'm going to move it backwards and forwards. It doesn't matter if you bruise the head over, but we haven't got much surface area, and this is why you should never use these 12-point spanners on these shouldered bolts because they are a bugger to get out. Right, let's see if we can move this. You can sort of see the corrosion on that. Yeah. But fortunately we didn't snap the bolt. Hurrah! So now we've got to do the same down here on this power steering pump, because we don't want to take all the power steering hoses off if we can help it. So that's got those off. That's a little technique, just winding them backwards and forwards. When we put these in, we're going to put lots and lots of thread guard on. So one more bolt. Right, we've been messing about with this camera. I've had it on and off and all sorts. So this bottom corner bolt here off the power steering pump, well, that was pretty tight, but it wasn't tight because it was rusted up. It was tight because there was too much tension on the bolt. It was screwed in so tight that by rounding it off, the tension was still there. So I drilled off the head here, and that let the tension off. Then we pulled the pump out, and this came out finger tight. Sometimes they get rusty, sometimes they get tight, but I know from old that these bolts here don't get rusty, so it was under too much tension. And because they've got such small heads on, they're so easy to round off, and so they've been tightened up too much, and then after a period of time they've got maybe a little bit of corrosion, then they're a bugger to get off. So the next thing we need to get off is, there's a bolt under here, and this is why we took the power steering pump off. And also, by taking the power steering pump off, we don't have to take off and drain any of the oil off, so that's a good thing. Yeah, this has had a replacement pump done at some time, so that's some monster's been in there and tightened everything up too much. You can see the P gasket's dripping away down there, so it's a good chance to take it off. I'm going to film it when we take this off, and you can see exactly what's wrong with it. 2 more bolts, and then we're done. Well, we're done taking it off. Then we've got to put it back on again. So I'm taking the last bolt out now, and you can see all the coolants coming out the block. So you'll see it in... Yeah, it doesn't matter about that. It's on the floor. You just have to push that bolt back a bit. Now, here we go. We'll see this in real time. What this looks like behind this water pump. Well, it's had a metal gasket on, but it was still leaking. I expected a paper one, but it was dripping away. But usually these are paper. That's a surprise, but there again, they've put no sealer on it, so I don't know. Now, a thing to check on these, see, it's all gummy with rubbish. The face here is good, it's not pitted or corroded. So all we've got to do now is clean it up, clean the bolts up, and put it all back together again. All that work just to change that gasket, but believe me, it's worth it, because it was leaking, because we saw coolant at the back of here. So let's put a new one on. I've got the new metal P gasket, and what I should have done is shown you that there's a raised section on here, but I've just covered it in high-low sill, this high-low sill 100. Maybe you can see on this one there's a raised portion on here, and that's why you can't use them twice. It compresses, but just to help it along its way a little bit, I always put some high-low sill on just for the expansion and contraction. So what we're going to do, first of all, forgot something really crucial. We've got to blow those bolts out. Just wait a minute, let me get my blow gun. So whenever you're working on where there's water around here, get your blow gun and blow these bolt holes out. See it all come out? Not bothered about this too much. In fact, we'll blow it out. There we go. Down. Right, that's all right. So now we'll put our gasket on. Listen to the sound of my squeaking compressor. And we're going to coat the bolts in anti-seize. Now we're going to put the bolts through the holes first, and that's to align everything up so that gasket doesn't drop down like that. That's what it does, it keeps falling. You'll see what I mean.
There again.
Yeah, see what I mean. So we'll give these a good coating. I'll have to tighten that belt up on that compressor. It's supposed to have an automatic tensioner, but it's not automatic in. There we go. That's them. We're going to pop them through this hole here. Now we're going to change the water pump gasket, but not yet. Do you think you could lift that alternator up out of the way a little bit, please? Just move it. Yeah, that's it. That's the story. Because this is a bit tricky to line up. Not impossible, but just a bit tricky. I usually do it with a bungee.
No, don't think so. I think the gasket moved down.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I'm just going to push it up with my finger at the back. Now we're just going to get this started a little bit. That will keep it in place, and then we're going to tighten up the rest of the housing bolts, and then we can take the water pump off. We could have done it on the while it was off, but we'll change the gasket now. Those are the crucial ones to get lined up. Alright, because we probably broke the gasket in here with all that messing about. So let's put the all the bolts back in. Let's put that one into there. Three-eighths ratchet gun. That's what we do. Oh, there it is. Spend most of your time trying to look for tools. Take that socket in. Where's that? You can tell this is real time. We'll probably have to edit this bit out. What's my pliers gone? Go on, look for the pliers now. All the bolts, just put a little bit of anti-seize on everything. You never know who's going to take it apart yet next. It might be me, so I might as well do it. Right, tighten that up. You can actually do this cover. You don't need to take the front pulley off, which is a good thing. Yeah, that's all it needs. It only needs a nip. It doesn't need like monster tight. You know, I mean, I know you can torque them up, but after doing this for years and years, you sort of get to know how tight to do a bolt. And somebody's obviously put this together with a gun and just done it a bit too tight. The problem with the gun is you've got no feeling on it. You can't feel what the hell you're doing. That's that. That's that. Alrighty, so the next thing is we'll put the alternator on. So if you drop that back down there, we'll put this through this hole here. That's it, it goes up there. That's it, that's the story. That's it. Through there, we get it round, the nut on. And I've already put some thread guard on here, and then that's that. 13mm key. Yeah. That's it. Now, we'll put the power steering pump back on. Now, we're missing a bolt. I always buy these flange bolts, I buy the hundreds. So we'll put some new ones on. Those things here, they're worth the weight in gold because you can buy them in a packet of hundreds now, and they're dirt cheap. So much. They're good in one way because you don't need a washer, but they're bad in another way because they haven't got a very big head on them. Wait a minute, someone's here. Who's this? Right, so with that all bolted down, tightened up, what we're going to do now is take the water pump off. Of course, it can't really go anywhere now. Hopefully these bolts come out. Now the short ones usually do come out pretty easy, but as you can guess, that is tight. That one's alright. That one's alright. That one's alright. This one. That one's alright. We'll give it a bit of a tap and see if it will push that oil down into that hole. Ah, God, these are tight. You know, as I was saying there earlier, that oh, that doesn't feel good. And there we go. Snap bolt. More fun. Using the same method again by when this stud snapped off here, by hitting it on the end, putting some penetrating oil on, banging it, moving it a little bit about with a pair of pliers, just ever so slightly. The oil's managed to get down inside there and free those threads off. And now, this should screw out, hopefully. Oh, not like that. There we go. I'm going to wind that back in again. Wind some oil in. Everyone's a winner, eh? And quite a long bolt to snap off, but it snapped off on the thread. This is all the rest of the bolts that we took out, and you see we need to clean them up because the gaskets failed on the water pump and water's got between the bolts. between the threads, which is not good. So I'm going to get Martin to clean off that gasket, and I'm going to clean up the bolts and we'll put a new gasket on. So I cleaned up the gasket, put some high-low sill on the gasket just in case. We've got thread guard on all the bolts. It gets really messy, but well, it's worth it in the long run. Get all the bolts in, and then we'll tighten it up evenly, and then it should be okay. I cleaned up all the bolts in the wire brush, so they should be kind of easy to get in. Except for that one. Oh, I know I've missed that piece off. Oh, yeah. I think we'll start selling tickets. Who's this here?
It's a great shop with a lady inside.
Lady. Don't know many of them round here, do we, Jerry?
No comment.
No comment. Right, I'm going to tighten these bolts up. We'll see how we go on. Right, so with that all evenly tightened up, just don't work around them. Just tighten them up opposite and even. And don't monster tighten them up. They don't need to be done with a gun, just do them with your hand. The next thing we can do is put the pulleys on. This obviously was our power steering pump. Yeah, that feels alright. I don't like taking pumps off, you know, hammering them, but there we go. So we'll put these bolts in. Always make sure you got the pulley to the front. They are marked. I don't know why, and I still haven't worked out why. Obviously the water pump, that's a bit of a giveaway because it's only going one way. There. Those bolts are too long, so I'm going to put some shorter ones in. Now those I will nip with a gun a little bit because they're on rotating pulleys, but you'll see how tight I do them, because like I say, I just use my little gun, and she's good as gold for doing these type of things. That's it. Now you'll be able to get them off by hand because we've checked these with the torque wrench, and the torque on that is just about right. So the next thing, we can put the tensioner back on. Again, don't be frugal with the anti-seize. That back on, belt back on, hoses. We should be good to go. So a 5-minute job. We've got nearly 2.5 hours into doing a 5-minute job. Oh well, that's the way it goes. So, like, by doing it like this, we didn't have to undo the the hoses for the power steering. That was good. We didn't have to undo the alternator. We've changed the gaskets. We're observing at the same time these steel bushings in here for the pipes, these stub pipes. Make sure they're not all corroded. Same as on here, they're not all corroded. If you find any corrosion, get out as much as you can with a wire brush, and you can even fill it up with a bit of metallic putty and then sand it, and then the hoses won't leak. Same as on here, this is usually all corroded, but this one's not. this one's been pretty good. So we'll check the belt, we'll put the belt on, and then we'll come back and put the radiator in. So we've got it all boxed back up again, and the last thing we're going to do is give it another test for coolant, make sure all the gaskets are nice and tight. I didn't film putting it back together again because it was kind of boring, and you've seen it time and time again. So, but what we're doing now is we're giving it a test, pumping it up to 15 and seeing if it holds pressure. So far, so good. No drips on the floor.
15.
15? Okay, let's hold it at that. Because before it was pouring out. So far, it's not pouring out. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So we'll leave it 10 minutes and then we'll get it all started. So there we go. It's running like clockwork. Listen to that. That's how they should sound. And look, there's no vibration. It's not jumping all over the place. The pulleys are nice. There's no screeching or anything from the pulleys. I think it's good to go. But it just goes to show you when you send your car into a garage and get a repair done and it's catastrophic, all it needed was a hose clip tightening up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye!